not disturb mode, just so all of us are not disturbed. And I probably should put it on all devices. So let me see. This is where we are here. Okay. And I think we're ready. We'll get some people coming in. Guido, what's up, brother? It's good to see you. Good morning and welcome to the Freedom Coffee live stream. And this is going to be, I hope, the best Friday of your life. It's going to be a little bit of a stretch. Why? Because, wow, is it damn cold all over the place. And as long as you're in North America right now, I think we're getting, what is it? We're supposed to get a polar vortex here in the Northeast, in Canada, minus 50 degrees or something to that effect. What is that in Celsius? Sorry, in Celsius, in Fahrenheit. Was that like minus 20, minus 25, something like that? Oh, wait, no. At minus 40, they converge. So minus 50 is minus 50 on both, isn't it? But sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late, but when the pilot's late, the plane doesn't take off. So I apologize, but there's a lot going on. And look, outside, by the way, there is another blizzard. You know, I was supposed to be living in Florida all summer this winter. So, you figure, we'll push things back a few months. The winters have been mild for the past couple of years. How bad could it be? Every day is a blizzard. Every single day is a blizzard. It's infuriating, but what can you do? I guess the highlight is yesterday. It was 10 degrees, not a cloud in the sky in Pennsylvania. And 10 degrees in American is, what is 10 degrees? What, 55 degrees, something like that? It was mild. It was great. So I hope you have your coffee. We're not doing the, I'm playing with the whole, there's a whole bunch of us simultaneous sippers. It's a tip of the hat to Scott Adams. And I'm playing with the idea if that's something that we need to adopt here as well as we grow. But I don't know. As you know, it has been a rallying call for reasonable people of all sides to come together. And maybe that's something that we should try. So let me know your thoughts. A couple of things, Discord and locals. We're going to continue with both as we're restructuring everything. So nothing's going to change on that end. So I encourage you to join Locals, Discord, and Substack, which we're broadcasting to as well. And thank you for those of you who support Substack and Locals financially. Appreciate that. There's going to be special things for you in the future, I promise you. And I know some of you listen on Spotify, and I just want to reiterate there is a 24-hour lag in the audio feed. It's not something I can control right now, trying to figure out a solution, but that's just how things are. And also, just to follow up on what we discussed in some previous streams, have you all been looking for the far left MAGA copycats? Have you seen them? Because I'm seeing more and more indications of them. We're going to talk about that, probably not today, maybe tomorrow. We'll get more into the state of far-left MAGA proto-commie copycats in a pickup truck and in a southern accent. But very concerning. So a couple of articles I have posted in the past few days, past week. One was, if you haven't seen them, they're on Substack. One of them's already made the rounds to National Telegraph, Zero Hedge, Daily Bell. And that is the Supreme Court ruled the EMA was, the Emergency Measures Act during the Freedom Convoy, was illegal and unreasonable. That was the Trudeau-Carney humiliating loss. And the other article I released was about the passing of Scott Adams. So please check it out and give it a like if you agree. And if you don't, then you don't have to. So in the tradition of our friend Scott, notice I slipped in the sip there. In the tradition, I went to what I think is was one of Scott Adams' favorite news websites or news accounts, Twitter account and a website called SciPost. And I saw this post and I thought, Scott Adams fans would understand this. I thought, please, please, please let this be Eric Dolan. So I click on the link and boom, it was Eric Dolan as well. A Scott Adams tradition. So for those of you who don't know, Eric Dolan frequently posted the most obvious studies that, as I suggested last time, might just be money laundering, but the most obvious studies to all the things that anybody in the world intuitively knew, to which there didn't need to be a study. And the one I came across today was this. This is what the post in the article said. So the post said, generative AI models exhibit distinct cultural tendencies depending on the input language, according to new research. The study found that Chinese prompts elicit more relationship-focused responses, while English prompts yielded more individualistic outputs. Really? Okay. And then I went through the article and I found this part where it says, the research suggests that using Chinese, I guess it means Mandarin, leads AI to produce more relationship-focused and context-aware responses, while using English results in individualistic and analytical outputs. Yes, yes. And what's the point? I don't think it takes a lot to understand that China, the grandfather of bureaucracy and organization, is more collectivist than, how should we call it, the post-Enlightenment Western world built on individualism. And that would be reflecting in its language and how we communicate. Who didn't know that? Did not everybody know that? I know somebody who would likely have said they knew that would have been Scott Adams trolling Eric Dolan. But yeah, who knew? Cultures that are more collectivist have more collectivist language. Shocking. And AI news, and by the way, anybody who has any comments, don't hesitate to send them in there. If you agree or if you disagree, just be nice. And I'll get to them when I can, as long as we have some time. So as far as AI's best right now, I had an experience this week, and some of you know I've done very deep dives. I use AI for just about, for most things in some capacity. And, well, not most things, but certain specific tasks. And this week, I was in a jam, and it was a time constraint jam. And it boiled down to regulation, certification, a deadline that I wasn't told of, and I found out the last minute. So I had to go do this, essentially a last minute certification within a particular time crunch, or I would have been stuck across the border. And this is something that we're all trained in, and it's really quite frustrating and monotonous, because it just requires referencing multiple reference guides to find codes for verification of stuff. It's just not a waste of time. I mean, once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. But it is an exercise that I just didn't have the time to do it. So I thought, we have AI. So I'm going to answer all the questions that I just kind of know right away. And the ones that I have to reference the materials, I will go and I'll use the AI for that. Instead of getting all the different handbooks and cross-referencing charts and all that sort of stuff, you think AI would be amazing for that, because it can scrub the data from around the world, and I can input, okay, this is the code, this is the associated code, what is the regulation, here are the 3 questions, and it can just cross-reference for me and save me a ton of time, okay? And so I usually, the AIs that I'm using most frequently now, it always changes. I use Grok for one set of things, and ChatGPT and Gemini, I use a lot more referential stuff. I know people like Claude I think Claude's better just for writing, but that's just my opinion. But they're all pretty good now, right? So I went to ChatGPT. I filled out, I don't know, I had like half the questions already. Just boom, 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 things I just knew offhand. And the reference charts, I went to ChatGPT. Did it with ChatGPT, submitted the questionnaire, and it failed. It failed with 77%. This is one of those certifications you require 80%. So I thought, oh, well, that was a great waste of time. Let's invoke another questionnaire, and same thing, do everything, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I knew, again, like half of the things didn't require reference. And I thought, okay, well, let's use the other AI that I've been using a lot lately that everyone says kills all the other ones in terms of for reference. And that was Gemini, which is the Google AI. And I went to Gemini and did the questionnaire, and wouldn't you know it, scored 95% and passed immediately. So there's some anecdotal experience with some raw numbers, the ability for ChatGPT to search and reference stuff online versus Gemini's ability. And Gemini was far superior. It was the difference between a pass and a fail. So it was significant. Jesse says, hi, y'all. Hit the like button. Yes, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Jesse. And Jesse says to everybody, good morning. And Rocky is here watching. Hey, Rocky. If you send me another video of Rocky, I'll post him maybe the next feed tomorrow or something. So anyways, there's some real life experience. The other thing, I've been using AI a lot because it snows every day now. Every day. You know that global warming thing? Every day there is a blizzard. It's crazy. It's infuriating. So what I've had to do a lot, the days that I've had to get out of here and get on the road, because I'm not in Florida already and very bitter about it. But I will go to AI. I found an amazing use for it. So for those of you who are on the road, those of you who travel and drive long distances, I realized this in the first storm of this year. I said to AI, I'm going to such and such a city from this city. What is the weather reports for each, the weather forecast for each region in each highway, and which route should I take to avoid weather patterns? And in this particular one, it said avoid Highway 17 in New York State because even though that's the shorter route, there are stronger weather advisories, and it lift off a list of towns on Highway 17, whereas Highway 84 is already being cleared by snowplows and is cleared more regularly. So even though the distance is longer, you have less chance of getting trapped and you will be quicker. It was just very interesting to go through that experience, to have a conversation with Gemini and explain in detail, which this is what a prompt is. Here's my situation. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm trying to avoid. And where should I go with this? And it routed me around it. And there are some other people I know who didn't use that. And it took them significantly longer to get to their destination. So just throwing it out there. So far, I'm not a huge fan of Google. But I got to tell you, that Gemini thing, since I switched to an Android phone, it's pretty good. It's pretty difficult to resist. And that's, the often balance between privacy and convenience that we struggle with. And but what can I tell you? Also, that's why you hedge your bets and use as many AI models as possible. They're all very good in very different ways. There's certain things I use Grok for, which I wouldn't use any other AIs for. Grok is actually quite amazing. But more on that coming soon. We're going to talk a lot more about AI in future streams. Something we touched on last time that I thought was, this ties into what we saw at the World Economic Forum. We're going to get there. We're going to get there with the Trumper and Carney and the clown show that's gone on there. It was really quite entertaining watched both of theirs, and I'm sure many of you did, but we'll get to that in a second. But, let's start at the more local level. In Toronto, I mentioned last time that End Wokeness, which is a Twitter account or an X account, posted a video of the land acknowledgements in the city of Toronto, declaring that Toronto is built on stolen land. And it's just amazing to some of us here that people didn't know this happened and happens. It happens regularly. It happens in our schools. As I mentioned last time, it happens at charity events, happens at select sporting events, especially kids' sporting events, because that's where you really got to brainwash them when they're kids. You got to teach them to hate their country. And that's all what this is about. But the thing that also I found amazing is people didn't know that Trudeau used to do these stupid things all the time. All the time, Trudeau did land acknowledgements. Our members of parliament are useless fools in government. They all do. I mean, on the far left, I don't think they do on the conservative side yet, but I'm sure they will. They all do these stupid land acknowledgements and engage in the hollowing out of our country from the inside. That's the status of Canada right now. I used to work for a company many years ago that was involved in an advisory role with the government and with the private sector in construction of some of the mines up north in the Northwest Territories. Okay. And what was interesting, I was out of school, I was young at that point, and it was fascinating and infuriating to learn of the obstacles that business, international business in this case, experiences to operate in Canada all over, including in the Arctic, which is, all the buzz right now. And it was shocking to learn that in this particular case, this is a multi-billion-dollar project that was held up for years. And why was it held up for years? And this is, again, Arctic Circle, basically, middle of nowhere. It was held up because the Canadian government, in its wisdom, I think it was Trudeau Sr., who did this, if I'm not mistaken. The Canadian government surrendered the water rights in the entire region. So what does that mean? That means that the indigenous tribes in the neighborhood owned the water. Yeah, that's what's set up in our country. That's how demoralized we are on the inside in this country. So you have a multi-billion-dollar project that's going to employ all of these people who obstruct the project because they say, no, we own the water. You can't do it without our permission, and the ancient land, all that sort of stuff. Anyways, so they couldn't build because of the surrendering of the water rights by the government to the native tribes. And you know what it became? This is one of the lessons you learn at a young age, how the world really works. Basically, it was a shakedown for bribes from the elders and the chiefs in the region. Why? Because what they would do is they would have this whole racket of negotiating tactics and getting close to a deal. And then the last minute, after months and years of blah, 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 they say, oh, wait, Uncle Joe hasn't seen it. Well, who the hell's Uncle Joe? Oh, no, he's the elder. He needs to, we're talking for years, right? This is not the only case. There's other cases like this. I'm using it as an example. But, and Uncle Joe would come in last minute, in his folksy jeans and overalls and say, we can't do this. I mean, so it was a complete and total shakedown. And what would happen is the tribe that would, in all these different regions, the native tribes that owned whatever particular rights to a particular region, they would basically shake down the government for bribes. And then once the government pays out, they just keep it to themselves, and the rest of the tribe can starve. And then they blame, the government, colonialism, whatever. This is why you see in some of the casinos the head chiefs driving around a $200,000 Mercedes, but nobody else has water. I mean, this is just human nature, right? It's the third world operating in Canada. And this is why people like myself are so, the philosophical reasoning as well, but these land acknowledgements are just total bullshit. Like, stop with this. Either you're in Canada or you're not. And it's just so frustrating, right? And really, land acknowledgements, they're brain poison. They're brain poison for you. They're brain poison for your children. I want to repeat that. Land acknowledgements are intentional brain poison. And what they do is they create the phenomenon of okaphobia, the okaphobia epidemic that we're dealing with in the West. Okaphobia is the opposite of xenophobia. Xenophobia is you hate outsiders. Okaphobia are the ones who hate their own country and their own society. That's what they're trying to breed into your kids. That's why they do these land acknowledgements, right? So they should all be banned, and you should all become very loud and disruptive if you're ever in witness of one. Please speak up for what it is. So this all relates to a broader set of topics that leads into the World Economic Forum and what we saw over the past this week. And it's this interesting question that I've been asking people for a while since this topic came up. And it's this. Do most Canadians, or should I say, why do most Canadians want to join the United States? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed how many Canadians? It's astonishing the number of Canadians that are fed up and they are willing to join America in some capacity. They're open to this idea, this sort of conversation. Have you noticed that? I think it's interesting because had this been 10, 15 years ago, absolutely no. Nobody would, right? The Canadian identity was strong. So Risa, I'm sure you're watching or listening to this, Risa. I think Risa listens, but Risa tagged me a post and she said, asking this broadly, she said, aside from ego and a clear lack of identity, quote, we are not Americans, end quote, what other reasons do Canadians have against this idea? The idea being that of joining the United States. And she goes on to say, I'm not being fastidious, and have lived my entire life in Canada. I am very patriotic, but also a realist. And in the sense that the world is changing fast, and I would much rather be aligned with the United States than Russia or China. Have you noticed the dramatic uptick in the people, in Canadians who are astonishingly eager even at the prospect of joining the United States? So there was some pushback, obviously. There always is. It's the internet, social media. What would it be without pushback, right? And I responded with my take, which was, I said, my take on the 4 pillars of human motivation, RICE, which I think I've discussed either in spaces or in this stream prior. So RICE is the acronym: reward, ideology, coercion, and ego. So if you understand that, you understand that's what motivates people to do things. And my take on it is reward is capitalism. Ideology is socialism or collectivism. Coercion is extremism. And ego is insecurity. That's kind of how I look at it. And I ask the question, which pillar drives those who reject even a mere conversation about joining? So we know the entire political class is in Canada's dead set against it because they're all grifters, right? I got a surprise for many of you when it comes to not even as much our elected officials, but the real people behind the scenes, the lobby class. They're all communists on the left and on the right, because they all want to suck on the breast of the government. All of them. None of them are private sector people. They're not capitalists. They get into politics because they want to extort as much of your taxpayer money into their hands as possible. That's what runs our political class here, in my opinion and my experience, right? But so we know they're going to be incentivized by the reward structure. But what about the average Canadian who's middle class or lower class, living in maybe in, I don't know, a rural or urban area, that they react viscerally to this notion and this idea of forming some sort of alliance? I don't know how it would be. I still guess it's going to be more of an EU type thing, which I'll talk about in a second. I don't mean the communism. I mean the the economic structure, right? But which pillar drives those who reject this so viciously, right? Well, I think there's a number of things. So we can look at those four pillars. I think a lot of it is ego, insecurity. People are just resistant to change. We don't like change. But also, the number one thing in terms of persuasion is, they often say that fear is the number one most powerful persuader. I think that's true, but I think there is something that goes along with it, and that is identity. That identity is just as powerful a persuader as fear. So again, we're not making rational decisions, we're making emotional decisions, in this case, based on identity. But so why the shift of people that would previously never would have considered this, but now are open to the idea of, yeah, maybe we should have some sort of alliance with the United States in terms of government structure, whether it be statehood or territory, or just getting rid of the border and having an EU type structure. But people are more open to it than ever. And this is what I think that happened. Tell me if you disagree. But Jesse tells everybody join the Discord. I love you. You're the best. This is what I think happened. When the Trudeau-Carney Liberals, because it's the same party and the same people, when they brutalized us truckers in Ottawa, that was the end of Canada. Think about it. That was Canada's most embarrassing moment ever, when the Canadian government turned into the Iranian mullahs. It was condemned all over the world by countries all over the world, because there were convoy protests in almost 40 countries around the world, if you remember correctly, all over South America and Europe and Southeast Asia, Africa, because we got the videos. They were sent to us. We were getting them. It was crazy. And so I think that's when that was the end of Canada. And you don't think so? Well, what has become the reputation of Canada ever since? You notice people who travel, and less people are traveling, of course, but I travel a lot. And yeah, the backpacker season's in the summer. We've gone through a couple of years already. You don't see young backpackers sewing Canadian flags under their backpacks anymore, do you? You got to think about it. It's on a subconscious level. It's not their people aren't necessarily consciously aware of it. But have you noticed that? Have you noticed the joke about the traveler with the Canadian flag? That's no longer a thing. That's done. And did you notice after 10 years of Canada is a post-national state, racist colonizers, and has no national identity, it then brutalized its citizens like a communist dictatorship. Remember the importance of identity? Well, when you listen for 10 years that you don't have a national identity, through repetition, the godfather of persuasion, guess what happens? Don't have an identity anymore. So the people who've reached out to me privately and said, yeah, Canada no longer has an identity. Yeah, that's because you heard that for 10 years over and over again from the people who are in charge of protecting that identity. And then the government in that time also tried to introduce, for the first time ever, retroactive legislation, right? Banning crowdfunding. If you had donated to crowdfunding, you're in the future breaking the law in the past that was legal, which is, unless you got a time machine, that's not something that is logically consistent. And then they stole the money. They stole the money that you donated to, as Scott Adams described it, clawing back the government and clawing back your freedoms to where they should be. They went and stole your money from you. They killed Canada. They killed it. They said it themselves. We're a post-national state. So no wonder so many Canadians are now open to or eager to join the United States and become American. I mean, we are both North American, of course, but this is why they did it. The Carney liberals did it. I think it's because of them that there is such a thirst to join the optimism we see in the United States. And I got to tell you, somebody who spends most of my time in the United States, that place is booming. It really is. It's a completely different place than what it was. And, you know, it's so funny. No wonder so many Canadians want to join the U.S. because of these circumstances. And those who can afford it have already fled. You know how many people I know who've left the country and said, I'm done with that place. I'm out of here. So I posted something in this area. And look, this is all, you know, working theories, thought exercises. You know, it's important to have these conversations. But I posted this on X. I asked, after Greenland joins the United States, Canada will be in the crosshairs. Are we going to see an EU-like economic zone, a united America zone, no border, dollarization, expanded NORAD, where the U.S. and Canadian military forces secure the Arctic? The U.S. steps in and limits immigration into Canada. Maybe they take it over and start doing the necessary screening of people coming into Canada. And maybe open trade and natural resource expropriation. So that crossing the border, what's the point of having the border? Just make it one open economy and start deporting all the people who came here under nefarious circumstances, of which we have millions of them, right? We have 100,000 Hezbollah fighters in Canada right now, by the way. So I don't know. That's kind of how I see it. I think our political class not only shot themselves in the foot, but they killed the country. They actually ended Canada. For a decade of it's a post-national state, and then in the final hurrah, what did they do? They turned into the Iranian mullahs and brutalized their own citizens at the most peaceful protest in Canadian history. I think that's why so many people are said, I've had enough. I've had enough. I see the optimism in the administration in the United States, and I want to be a part of it. I have heard that from not only so many people, but just like during the trucker convoy, all socioeconomic, all ends of the socioeconomic spectrum, from very, very wealthy people in finance to truckers to teachers. I have a friend who's in a union. All of them are saying the same thing. So anyways, so that brings us on to the World Economic Forum and Mark Carney. Now, I don't know about you. I was told at some point that this guy was smart. Now, I don't know how that happened, but I was told he's very popular in Ottawa. Everybody loves him. He's such a smart guy. It's just like there's some great energy around him. This is long before he was elected, picked, appointed leader of the Liberal Party. We know how corrupt that process was as well. So I was told this guy was smart. I was told he's not a moron. But Trudeau now makes sense now, because we all know that he was apparently, once Butts was formerly out of the picture, that Carney had a significant role in persuading and moving the Liberal Party direction, which is why it's gotten even worse now that he is in the prime minister's office, right? So we're going to get, for all the Americans listening, I promise we're going to get into Trump because that's next. Hold on, we're going to get to Trump. But in Mark Carney's World Economic Forum speech, it was just an astonishing exercise in deception and gaslighting. And gaslighting is really the worst form of lying, because gaslighting, you're actually causing mental illness in the other person, or intentionally trying to do so, because you're trying to tell them you're crazy. Don't believe your lying eyes, right? But it was quite astonishing. The few things he said. There's some of the key phrases I pulled out of here. One was, there was a hope that compliance will buy safety. Really? Really? It definitely doesn't buy you freedom, as we learned in Ottawa, because all that compliance leading up to that trucker protest is why we got there. Because the more people complied, the less freedom they had. You know who else learned that? The people who lived, the Jews who lived in mid-century Germany, they also learned that you cannot comply your way into safety, freedom, and security, right? That's not how humans work. But once again, the left always has this, I guess because they're so collective and they see people who disagree with them as just the 5% policy rejection, and they don't see people as humans. That's why they don't understand human motivation. I'm talking about the radical extremists. I'm not talking about reasonable, rational, liberal type people, right? But I do think Carney might be the least self-aware person on the planet. It's astonishing. I think he's worse than Trudeau, or just as bad as least. Carney invoked Havel's famous 1978 essay, "The Power of the Powerless." For those of you who know the history of Yugoslavia, you'll be familiar with it, right? But he focused on the idea of living under the lie of communism, something Konstantin Kisin talks quite a lot about on trigonometry. And it's so infuriating. These idiots are so infuriating. Living under the lie of communism and extremism and collectivism. Hey, guy, why do you think you had some trucks in Ottawa? That's what they were protesting against. You are the one that Havel was warning against. You, not some other people. It's not the Bolsheviks that are, the Soviets are coming in. And this is important for people to understand into their subconscious. When you hear the word communism, I talk about on the radio sometimes, the idea of ethno-communism. So it's that communist collectivism, not based on the worker, but based on the race of the individual. We see that all over the place, right? That's why racist was supposed to be the all-ending smear of people. Mark Carney is a Western communist, an ethno-communist. So when you hear the word communist, you think of Soviet Russia. That's not what this is. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this ethno-communist idea. That is, it's embedded in Western society right now, this idea of the ethno-communist mind frame. That is, or the mindset, that is Carney. That is Trudeau. That is the woke left. That's what they are. All these fake protesters that you see, they are ethno-communists. And if things accelerate and they continue to gain more and more power, they will kill you. Sorry, they will. Eventually, you're going to move from beyond a group of corner case policy resistant individuals, which is how they refer to you. If you read the book Thinking in Systems, you'll get a better sense of how they operate. Great book if you can get through the communism. But that's how they view you. That's why during the trucker protests and other protests like that around the world, it was just policy resistant. It was a segment of policy resistant behavior, is how they described it. That's all it was. Um, it's very funny that he goes on. He's explaining the idea of living under the lie and how I guess now he's the victim, just like Trudeau was the victim during the convoy, and Friedland was the victim. And I'm telling you, you cannot hate these people enough. You can, and this is why. And I said this in a couple of interviews during the trucker protest. You cannot hold the highest office in the country, have all the power, all the political power, and the media power, and the media support, and play the victim. No, no, no. For all of you, for the postmodernist people, the oppressor versus oppressed frame, you are the oppressor by definition because you're in the position that has the ability to oppress. But it's astonishing how all these man children, you have an old man who thinks like a 5-year-old who gets into the highest position and thinks he's a victim. Fuck you. You're not a victim. Sorry for the bad words. You are not the victim. You're the ultimate oppressor. And I don't buy into that oppressor versus oppressed frame myself, but it's just infuriating that these overgrown children, these mental midgets, think they can sell themselves that they are the victim of some system that they control. So frustrating. He goes on to say, we cannot live with the lie of mutual benefit of integration if integration is the source of your subordination. Yes, that's why there was a trucker protest. You putz! Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'll dial it back. It just, some of these things are just, I know many of you are equally frustrated, but so I'm sure we echo each other on this topic, right? And by the way, that's Trump's point. So we'll get on to that in a second. Who are the people who fall for this? And I think I know who falls for this. And for those of you who are fans of or familiar with Scott Adams, this is going to really resonate with you, I think. For those of you who are watching now and in the future who will know, I'll put this question out there, which is, what percentage of Canada's population always votes for the Liberal Party no matter what? No matter what, always votes for the Liberal Party. There is a specific percentage, and we have years and years of data on it. And we dealt with it on my campaign as well. And it was astonished. What percentage of Canadians always vote for the Liberal Party no matter what? Well, it's about 1/4 or 25%. It's exactly 25%. And the thing that's funny about that, so for people who don't know, to give the context, this was a regular skit, if you will, that Scott Adams talked about when he would go through these Rasmussen polls and etc. That 25% of people are just batshit crazy and will give you the stupidest answers to every question. Every question, 25% of people will always give you the stupid answer. What color's the sky? 25% of people will select purple. Do you want freedom? 25% of people will say no. Do you want better economic prosperity? 25% of people will say no. Always, every time. Well, 25% of Canadians vote for the Liberal Party no matter what. And then Carney goes on to say, he says, and in AI, we are coordinating with like-minded democracies. Democracies? Democracies like China? Like the deal you just did with China? To basically open up the country to China and turning America into our greatest adversary? Because you just aligned with their adversary? Really? And he goes on, he says, towards the end of his speech, quote, this is Carney saying about Canada, our public square is loud, diverse, and free. Yeah, honk honk, motherfucker. What are you talking about? You remember C-19 that's divided up into those bills, and you can be prosecuted for your Twitter posts or whatever the hell it is. I don't even know. Really, diverse and free. What a moron. The least self-aware person on the planet. It's astonishing. The POS, and I don't mean point of sale, penned an article during the trucker convoy trying to label the most peaceful protests in Canadian history sedition. So he attacked middle-class, working, upper-class people who all came together in the most peaceful, largest event in that nature in Canadian history, largest convoy in world history, and he attacked those business people by calling them seditious. Which part was the seditious part? The barbecues and the dance parties? Like, what a putz. And anyways, so to top off Carney's WEF speech, we'll get into Trump next. What is, and I do love this framing of it, what's got called the dog not barking. The dog not barking is the story everybody should be talking about, but nobody is. What's the dog not barking about Carney's speech? Did you notice not a word about climate hysteria? I thought the world was ending, right? Was the world going to end in 10 years and all that, so the climate stuff and whatever? Not even a syllable, which is why I go back to what I explained a few episodes ago about the far left MAGA copycats. They're going to abandon climate change, the climate hysteria. It'll still be there, but it's not going to be hysterical. They're going to abandon trans and putting trans on the leading, the headline of every article. You notice that's already disappeared because they're going to try to shapeshift and morph into, rural truck driving guys who just happen to be communists but look like they're hired PR agents. Well, there you go. There's another indicator of that. Mark Carney on the world stage said not a single syllable about his pet fetish of climate change. So there's another dog not barking, the story that everybody should be explaining. And this is about Trump. So Trump gave a speech that was, Carney's was 16 minutes. 16 minutes, he already looked tired. It was hysterical. Trump went on for, an hour and a half, and then did a Q&A after. So why'd he get a, you can see the energy, and this relates to the dog not barking about Trump. If you notice, one of the first things, and boy, does that guy know how to sell and read a room. What's the first thing that Trump said? Was it Trump? No, I think it was Fink, actually, because Fink introduced him. The first thing he noticed, and he said out loud, he said, wow, the room's at full capacity. There was no more room. You could see there were people standing on the sides. There were no more seats left. Why? So that infers that, like all conferences, I speak at conferences as well, and there are some speakers that are always more popular than others, right? So that infers that, for many of the other speakers, it wasn't completely full like it was for Trump. Why was his speech at capacity? And then the second question, the other dog not barking, because, we hear from our legacy fake news media around the world how much he's hated, racist, you don't like him, all that sort of stuff, right? Why did he get a standing ovation when he walked in the room? So think about it. Put these two ideas in your head at the same time. We're supposed to think that Trump is Hitler, everyone hates him, he's the devil, all that sort of stuff, the things you see on like the communist broadcasting crap, the CBC, right? It's always what over and over again, that Trump is evil, everyone hates him, and whatever. But he shows up at the WEF. The room is at capacity. They can't fit any more people in the room. And he gets a standing ovation. What's going on? That's not supposed to happen. The other thing is interesting out of this is, do you still think the WEF is destroying and controlling the world? Because, you heard a lot of that hyperbole from a lot of people. I never really bought into it because I know politicians who just kind of rejected it and told me, yeah, it doesn't really mean anything. And then I remember Elon Musk saying that he was asked about the WF, and his response was, it's just a meeting for rich people. It's just a meeting for people or captains of industry to get together. And I had some people tell me who've been there that they don't really like when Klaus was running it. Klaus, whatever his name is, Klaus, Schwab, that most people didn't like him and thought he was a little bit like a little bit of a showboat and can be embarrassing sometimes. But if you are head of a Fortune 500 company and you want to have private face-to-face time with another Fortune 500 company, that the WF did an excellent job at marketing themselves as the venue for them to go to, kind of like what Qatar is trying to do in the Middle East, except Qatar is basically evil. That's a whole other issue we'll talk about another time. So what do you think? So the WF has now hosted Trump twice. They also hosted Javier Milei, who we're going to talk about Milei, I think, tomorrow, probably. And Milei was not kind to their worldview. So was Musk right? It's just a meeting for rich people, and rich people like middle-class people, like poor people, like people in the developing world. It's not one monolith. We're not collective. Everybody's different. We have competing interests. And so I don't know. I'm not saying either way here nor there. I know people go at the you will have nothing, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. I mean, that was a penned article from a radical leftist who they posted on their website. I don't understand why, but okay, fine. Maybe there's a whole bunch of other opinions that we would agree that they posted on their website. Did you ever check that? Did you ever check to see if they posted Donald Trump's opinions or Trump-like opinions? Maybe they have a whole diverse, group of posts that they put on there that we don't know. I don't know that. This is just a thought exercise, right? But the fact that they hosted Trump, Elon Musk, Javier Milei, Howard Lutnick, we'll talk about him as well. I think you're seeing the winds of change are definitely upon us. And I think the experiment with wokeness is over. The experiment that big business used, largely because they were harassed, of DEI and all this stuff, that is done. It's not in Canada, but maybe that's another reason so many Canadians want to join the United States, right? They don't want to hear land acknowledgements in their kids' school. They don't want to hear DEI in their kids' school. They don't want their kids to go to school and learn how to become racist, right? Which is what's happening in Canada. But anyways, it was described to me that Klaus, who was running the WF before, that he was like Trump. He just knew how to get media attention, and he understood that media attention and media outrage in general in social media is currency. So was that the whole point of you will own nothing and be happy? Was that just trolling all of you and all of us for outrage, for clicks, so we would start paying attention to them? It's kind of what I did in the trucker convoy. I knew that they just had to talk about us. And, once they started calling us racist and bigots, I'm like, yes, okay, fine, good. Now I have some metrics to go with and I can build upon that, right? And Klaus seems to have understood the same thing. At least that's what I was told. So Trump went on to describe the Somali pirates. It was so good. He said he said They're all pirates, and we shoot them out of the water. The narcos have submarines. They call submarines fishing boats, but we blow them out of the water anyways. And that was a dig at Gustavo Petro, the communist leader of Colombia, who's about to be ousted out of office. He's termed out in May. So congratulations, Colombia. He said the West cannot import people from failed to ever build cannot import people who failed to ever build a successful society of their own. Referring to Ilhan Omar specifically in that. And Ilhan Omar, I think I mentioned in a previous stream, it was her father, I think that was the commander of the Somali forces that went into Ethiopia and caused the famine in the 1980s, which is why we got We Are the World from all of the lefties in Hollywood. And then her and her family escaped to come to America, to come here to destroy the Western world, to destroy the West, just like they destroyed Somalia. That seems to be what happens. I don't know. I'm going to be paying her a compliment, by the way, in the next stream. Not what you think, but interesting. And that's part of my endeavor to find people you disagree with. And you can't always criticize everybody. Sometimes people you disagree with do one or two things that are correct, and they should be praised for that, right? But that's a whole other issue. No, I'm not a fan of hers. If that's what you're thinking, not at all. But anyways, this whole idea of importing people that failed to ever build anything successful in their own society, guess what? That describes the Israeli-Arab dispute that you see. I use a P word because it's inaccurate. Because you know what the primary, I don't know if people know this, one of the primary issues in that region with Israel and Judea, Samaria, and Gaza previously, there was a primary issue that's been going on for decades in that region. You know what it is? And you never hear the media talk about this. A lack of prisons. So it was explained to me one time, from somebody involved in politics. It was explained to me this way, that there will be people who will randomly fire rockets out of the Arab territories into Israel. And the people who engage in diplomacy and talk to them, because they all know each other, security, if you watch the movie Fauda, there is some truth in that both sides, their security forces, know each other, talk to each other, and collaborate on some things. And so what they would do is they find some, random idiot who fires rockets into Israel, hit a few houses or whatever. So they'll go to their dignitaries on the other side saying, there's a guy, can you take care of it? Okay, let's see what we can do. Again, watch Fauda so you understand this. Doesn't mean people aren't two-faced, but there's, you do need to have somewhat of a stable society just to live and have children. Everybody knows that. And so what they would do is they would find somebody and they would arrest him and they would put him in front of their equivalent, their court system, and they would be sentenced to something, whatever the penalty is, jail time or whatever. But there's a problem. They don't have any jails. They never built any prisons. Why do you think they're all in Israeli prisons? Because they don't have prisons. So when they don't have prisons and they're issued a sentence, where are they going to serve the sentence? You know where they're sent? They're sent home. And then they do the same thing over and over again. So this phenomenon is not unique to that particular conflict. This is for those of you who've traveled the third world. I have many friends who have lots of experience in Africa. This happens in countries all over the world. Is not the United States, or Canada. And this is always what frustrates me about the Champagne socialists who believe they're so worldly. They have zero experience with the rest of the world. Again, they're the 5-year-old in an adult body. So anyways, but that was the dog that was not barking around Trump's speech. Why was the room overfilled? And why did he get a standing ovation? That's important. All right, I'm going to have to shut things down because I'm running a little bit late today. I do love you all. And I don't want to, I'm testing Substack, which seems to cut out every 60 minutes. So far, we're so good, but hopefully we won't have any issues. We're going to talk more about a lot of these things, Iran protest and some of the other speeches, Milei. Watch the interview with Larry Fink and Elon Musk, and the Malay speech has been translated and dubbed into English. I think that will show you the signs that even the people at the World Economic Forum, who I think tried to go along with some of this DEI nonsense, because they actually believed it. They thought that the goal was to help make the world a better place. And maybe that's how it was sold to them. And they just didn't understand the implications of it and where it would go. But I'm very optimistic about the world after seeing this World Economic Forum, except for Canada. But I guess the optimistic part of Canada is everybody I know, just about everybody I know in Canada is ready to join the United States in some capacity. Doesn't mean they want to become a state necessarily, but they're ready to get rid of the border and open up our natural resources and build the biggest, most powerful, opportune economy the world has ever seen, which would probably lead to China becoming very, very submissive and very controlled at that point. And that might even lead to the freedom of people in China over time. It could have some massive rippling effects. But anyways, I love you all, and we're going to do another stream tomorrow. I promise you, we have this new schedule. We're going to we'll keep this up, and this will be at least until the end of March, and then things might get a little bit more frequent. Discord and what's it called, locals, follow those, because there's going to be some other stuff we'll be doing after hours as things grow over time. And that's it for today. I hope you all have an awesome day. I hope you stay inside if it's minus 50 degrees. But if you do go outside, if you do go to, I don't know, the grocery store, the gas station, those people are freezing as well and they're working. Be kind to them, and you'll make their day, and you're going to feel better about yourself. All right. That's it.